This is a production of KMmedia.pro. Welcome back to Positive Talk Radio. Our goal is simple: to explore evolving ideas one conversation at a time. So come on over into our world. I know you'll like it, because on today's show... Welcome to the show, everybody. I got to ask everybody a question. Do you feel a little, longer in the tooth? Have you been on the planet for a little while? Have you gained a lot of experience, and you might even be what they call a baby boomer? Well, we're going to talk about that today, and the publication that's out now that is geared towards baby boomers and who they are in all facets. And we're going to be talking with a gentleman who is... his pen name is Gramps Jeffrey, and he's written a couple of books, but it's also Mark Joseph. But first, before we go there, we're going into Labor Day weekend. And Eric, what's the prognosis for the weekend weather for the 3 days?
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be nice, at least today and tomorrow. Looks like sunny, warm days, and then Sunday cooling down a little bit. And Monday a little bit cooler as well, but looks like more sunshine. So we're winding down summer, that's for sure.
That's a great way to kick it off at the end of it. You got any special plans that you'd care to share? Probably not.
Nothing in particular, but I've got so many projects building up around the house. I know you know how this goes. You put things on a list and then you don't get to them and you don't get to them. And then before you know it, it's like, ooh, I really got to take a vacation so I can do some work.
Yeah, my list gets longer and longer than I throw in the garbage, and then I start a new list. So
hey, there you go.
It works out really, really well for me, and because I forget when I'm supposed to. Exactly. Well, I know that you are way too young to be a baby boomer. What would that be? What are you?
I believe I am Gen X.
Aha. Oh, very good. Well, one of these days you're going to be a baby boomer, and then you can join the rest of us
I don't think that's how it works.
No, it isn't. but as we age gracefully like a fine wine or a fine glass of whiskey, we are not done yet by any stretch of the imagination. And Mark Joseph, who is also Gramps Jeffries, Gramps Jeffrey, is with us today, and we're going to talk about the rollout of this brand new website, which is called, you can follow along by going to babyboomer.org. So with that,
that's easy to remember.
Yeah, and I'm wondering how they got that site actually, but
that must have been quick.
Exactly. So let's introduce Gramps to our audience right now. Mr. Jeffrey or Mr. Joseph, however you want to be, how are you?
You can just call me Mark. I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, and first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me, because Positive Talk Radio is one of the contributors of babyboomer.org, and I've got can you believe I've got over 580 shows on that platform alone?
Yeah, I'm looking at you right now on our site. You're wearing a nice hat. I can see your last interview was with Chris Sutton, and then other interviews. So yeah, you're right there, right in the middle of what we're doing.
We love being on the site. I love what you guys are doing. There is a perception in our country, and I think it's an incorrect assumption, that when you get to be a little bit longer in the tooth, that you somehow your value is diminished. And I think that is wholly wrong, because we are a youth-based society for some strange reason. But a lot of people that are our age, we still have a lot to say and a lot to contribute.
Well, the generation of baby boomers is as diverse as any other generation before and after us, because, look at the division in politics, look at the division in religion, but the one thing that baby boomers have in common is a very shared, connected experience. When you think about it, when we were growing up, there were only 3 television stations. We all had landlines. So we all got the same information. So we all grew up with the same information. So, we lived through the Kennedy's assassinations, through Martin Luther King's assassination. Our generation is the one that was there when they landed on the moon. birth control became widespread for the baby boomer generation. Vietnam was a heavy into our generation, as well as Kent State. We had the riots in the streets, back in the late '60s. But we had the music. The music brought us together. When you think about it, whether it's Elvis or the Beach Boys or the Beatles or Three Dog Nights or the Association Supremes, we all, because we had the three television stations and the landlines, we all got that all same information. We had the movies that caught us and kept us together, whether it's Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid or Jaws, pretty much all the Spielberg movies, the Animal House, Star Wars, The Godfather. All of this information brought this generation together. So even though we are diverse, we all have a commonality, and that's why we built this site.
And I'll tell you, I agree with you 100% because I'll give you an example. I was born in 1957, so I'm a tail ender of the baby boom generation. But the interesting thing is when I start talking to people who were born in like 1965, 1967, 1970, and it's even though that's only like a 10, 13-year period, they don't remember the Kennedy assassination. They don't remember when the Beatles were on the Ed Sullivan Show. They don't remember the moon landing or the tragic death of Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy, and of course JFK when he was. So they don't remember the entire 60s. They don't remember Walter Cronkite saying, and that's the news. And they don't remember any of those things. And I think we lost something in that. But there's a commonality where I can sit here and talk to you, and we can have a common shared experience of what life was like when we were as we continue to grow up and grow old. And I think we still have those same things. If you listen to baby boomers that are having a conversation in a coffee shop and they're talking about shared experiences, and that's what you bring to the table. I think it's awesome what you're doing.
Yeah, when you think about it, we've got all these things that we grew up with, but one of the things that we do on our site is we offer things of the current moment, whether it's retirement or finance or travel, but then also dealing with the new challenges that all of us older Americans are dealing with the technological advancements, all the health issues that we're facing, whether it's dementia or Alzheimer's or any of the other ones. So we're trying to bring all of that together because the things in the past, the things we're living with today. Pickleball is a great area of our site that people are pretty much involved. You talked to me about pickleball 20 years ago, that wasn't part of my life, but now it is. So, there's so many things.
Well, when you look at your site, which again is babyboomer.org, you've got news, entertainment, lifestyle, relationships, health, travel, money, technology. You get like you said, you have over almost 1,000 contributors, and so you've got experts of all different manners and stripes that can help us because our issues are particular to our generation. I think. Do you think?
Oh yeah, when you think about baby boomers, defined as the people born between 1946 to 64, so it's 18 years, a couple of decades of us that are out there, and there's over 70 million baby boomers here in the USA alone. So we're not alone. The baby boomer generation holds 51% of the wealth in the US. We hold 70% of the disposable income. We, as a generation, spend 548 billion. I mean, that's with a B. And so there's so much that we've got in common, and so much that we do that we've got to all talk together.
Exactly. Well, let's go back in the midst of time, not too long, because the babyboomers.org has been is really in its inception and is in what we're starting to call, or what Mark is calling phase 2. But what was the idea? I know you're one of the founders. Where did this idea come from? I think it's a great idea. Was it you guys sitting around having some coffee or something? And by the way, we're talking with Mark, and he's getting a glass of water, and so there. Are you better now, sir?
I'm ready to go now. But what happened how we came together with this idea, because there's myself and three other baby boomers who are partners in launching this site. But one of the things, it really came out of uh, the COVID-19 or being in isolation. That's how this all came together. For me personally, because I was in isolation, but had my six grandkids around, I had a chance to really see all these little kids growing up. And that's when I wrote my children's book. It's called I Don't Want to Turn Three. And I wrote this book because it was a chance to really try to understand what are kids, who are they today? And so I wrote this book, and then I was able to start to talk about people about the books, and COVID came about, and when we got through COVID, and as I was going around talking about my book, I found other grandparents, other people in our generation that seemed to be able to have a sense that, something's missing. Something is missing in our generation. We have to communicate it, because what I found out in dealing with other grandparents like myself is too many grandparents just don't care. And this is our baby boomer generation. 30% of grandparents in today's world really are not involved in the raising of their grandkids. Now, that means like one out of every three of us. And those 30% are referred to as remote because they may show up at a birthday or they may come at Christmas, but they really aren't involved in the raising of their kids. And the attitude of this part of our generation is, hey, we raise great kids, let them raise those kids, let them go play pickleball. So, but it's really deeper than that. As I was getting into it, why aren't grandparents involved in raising kids? The problem, a lot of the problem is that it's a relationship between us and our children. For instance, if one of our kids they marry a spouse that we don't like, all of a sudden, we're not as close as we used to be. So our kids, we may give them advice, gives them anxiety, and we as a generation disrespect the boundaries between us and the kids and the raising of their kids. There's all kinds of reasons that cause this 30% of us just to not get involved with our grandkids. One of the things is that bridge that we have with our children that we've broken because we undermine their authority by changing what their parents are teaching their kids. We may question the values that our kids are giving to their kids. We're the ones that gave them the values to begin with. So that we gotta say what happened to us there. We tend to play favorites and manipulate our grandchildren. That causes a rift between us and the kids and the grandchildren. I've got six grandkids. I have a favorite, but I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to even tell my wife. Because that's going to just cause all kinds of problems. So I like them all the same. We got to worry about that. We sometimes control our grandkids through playing favorites, through money, giving gifts, taking on vacation. That causes stress between relationship between us and our direct children. We as we get older, we may have a lack of empathy. We may not be able to understand what these little kids are going through. Where when we were younger, we may have been able to do that. And so it's important for us to give that empathy as we're taking care of kids. And we as grandparents, much like maybe our grandparents did with us, is we demand that they show us, respect, and they do what we tell them to do. So as I was going on this journey of talking about my book and how involved I was with that, this came out to me as there's something we got to do to get grandparents more involved in raising of their kids because we're here today, we could be gone tomorrow. There's so much knowledge that we have. When you take a look at you and me and everybody else our age, we are a lot smarter today than we were in the 20s. And the reason we're so much smarter is because we made so many more mistakes. And hopefully we've learned from those mistakes. And these are the kinds of knowledge that we have to pass on to these little kids. And so that's one of the reasons we started babyboomer.org, is we wanted a place where we can share ideas of how to become better grandparents, how to become a better generation. And so that's another reason.
Well, I think the whole premise is really powerful and important because you're right. I live in a 55 plus mobile home community. Most of the people that everybody here obviously is a baby boomer, but a lot of people are isolated. They stay in their home. They watch television for 28 hours a week. They're not involved with other folks because so we lose a certain amount of social um, togetherness when we get older for some reason. And then you're right, our kids, you know, we I believe I try and be a trusted advisor now, not the dad who tells them what to do, but if they ask, I'll give them my advice on what I think, and sometimes I'll just keep my big mouth shut, which is probably what I should be doing most of the time. But occasionally they'll ask for advice, and I'll give them what I believe to be true. But the reality is that they're the ones who are raising their kids, and they've got to, we've got to have buy-in. But one of the things that kills me about our country, and in other countries it's not this way, is that our country is based upon the youth and not necessarily the multi-generations. The old people in other countries are revered. Did you know that? It's like if you go to Japan or in some of the European countries, old people, and oftentimes they live with their kids and they have multi-generational households and stuff. We don't really do that here. So we ended up getting pushed to the side a little bit. And so I'm glad what you're doing is to help bring that back a little bit so that people can have an outlet, people can make connections with each other and can really get together to do some really cool stuff and to learn stuff. We're never too old to learn, don't you think?
Well, the greatest thing about learning is I am convinced that this generation, these kids 1 to 10 years old today, are going to be the smartest generation this country has ever produced.
I agree.
When you think about it, as soon as they come out of the womb, they're on the internet. They got their own phones. These kids, 2, 3, 4 years old. I sometimes go to my grandkids to help me on my phone. They understand this whole internet and this whole communication. So when you step back and think about that, they are getting just a flood of information much younger than we are. I mean, I didn't get on the internet till I was 40 years old. So they're getting so much more information than we ever had as we were growing up. Now, that's the good part. The thing we have to be concerned with is how do we balance that? How do we make sure that they're not on their iPad all day long and not out playing outside and getting exercise? And that's one of the roles that grandparents can really step up and do is, take them out, expose them to things beyond what they're getting off the internet. Make sure that you take them out and play in the park. Make sure that you have conversations for them. One of the things the grandparents need to do is make sure that they are reading books to their kids, that the kids go beyond just the internet and get involved in goods. You say, well, what are you going to talk about? Why should you read your books to your kids? Well, there's all kinds of benefits of actually sitting and reading books to a child. And again, I'll just take me for an example. I'm a grandfather. I've got a couple of smaller kids, and so the first thing it does is it creates a bonding experience. In other words, these 2 and 3 and 4 year olds, they're bouncing off the wall all day long, running around. It gives you a chance to really just spend nice time together. Pick up a book, have it sit on your lap, open a book, and it creates the time for you to just to help make them feel secure because you're there together, having an experience. Another thing that it does is it supports listening skills. Now, you and I both know that at our age, the best skill that we ever had was our listening skills. I mean, you're in the radio, you got to listen. You got to listen ask the right questions. I've got to listen to build the right sites. So listening skills, if we can teach these kids when they're 2, 3, and 4 years old by reading a book and doing it, reading a book requires them to listen. Let's start doing that as grandparents for these kids to help them offset all this internet stuff that they're learning. Another thing that reading books to little kids is good for is it creates cognitive and language development. I mean, you go through a book and there's words that the kid doesn't understand. You have a chance to explain it to them. I mean, I just plenty of books I've read out the words I don't understand. I gotta go look them up. But it gives you a chance to really help them build their language so that when they do get older and get into life, if you've helped develop the listening skills, if you can help them understand language, they're a step ahead of everyone else. And another thing is, the attention span. The 15 minutes that you've got the kid reading a book on your lap, it gives key concentration and self discipline skills, and it really helps with their attention span as they go through life and as they go through school. So it helps. So, I just encourage your listeners who are in the older generations to take the time, spend some time, read a book, if nothing else, to your grandchild to help enhance what they're learning through all the other electronic things that they do.
It's interesting because you and I are of a certain age. I actually remember people coming to the door to sell my mom and dad encyclopedias.
Yeah.
That no longer exists. You can't. There is no business there that Britannica and all of now it's all online. But the problem is, I used to, when I was in school, and I would go get an encyclopedia and I would page through it. And so I learned about things that I would not have thought of myself to look for. And so you get a well-rounded experience of life, and especially reading books to children gives them a chance to use their imagination. And rather than seeing it sitting there on the screen, as you're having a communication with them and they're getting a chance to really use their imagination to see what is going on in that book. I agree with you. That was the other thing that's gone away, and I'm so sorry to see. Do you remember when we were in elementary school and we would go to the library and they'd line us up and we'd be the whole class, and then we'd go look at books, and then we'd sit down and there would be the lady that would be the storyteller, and she would read a book to us. At least that's what happened in my experience. And that really gave me a thirst for wanting to learn more and to read more and to find other and different books. So, and we're missing a lot of that today, I think.
Well, it's necessary for us to teach children how to think, not what to think. They're going to learn how to think, what to think, as they grow older. But it's important for us at this early age to teach them how to think. And, when you think about it, going back to reading a book to them and getting them to think, and you're talking about your library experience, before you even sit down and read a book with a child, the first question should be, what do you think is going to happen here? You're looking at the cover, start them to think, help them to use the imagination, like you just said, because imagination can take you to all kinds of places. When you're sitting there and you're reading the book, you ask them who characters in this book. Let them use their imagination, and what is the setting? Let them tell you. Again, to get them to think. During the reading the book, you ask them, does anything in the book sound familiar to you? Has this happened in your life? Have you heard about it in other people's lives? And then, obviously, much like you should do every night at dinner, when you're talking to them and asking what was your favorite part of the day, when you're reading a book to them, what was your favorite part of this book? Why was it your most favorite part? So you're absolutely right, is teaching them to read or reading to them helps create teaching them how to think. And they'll learn later what to think, but it just teaches them the process. And I don't think you get that when you're just on the internet. So it's very important for us as adults to be involved in raising this greatest generation.
I was, and I don't often talk about current events necessarily, but in this particular case, there's in the Houston School District, they've eliminated 28 libraries from schools of different elementary schools, and it was like, really, they're important. They're much more important than we kind of realize, and so I'm saddened by that. I hope they bring them back. But that's just one of the things. Now, tell me about your book. I don't want to turn 3. What's it about?
Well, again, I wrote this book because I had a chance to be with all 6 of my grandkids for about 6 weeks. And when I did this, I realized that they all 6 had completely different personalities. But the one thing they did have in common was a sense of curiosity and how excited they got when they did accomplish something. Watching them grow year to year and how they interact with each other really was the basis for this book. Because what goes through a toddler's mind that parents are so desperate to understand. When does a toddler understand the difference between me and us? This book explores how a family finds all that out together. As a baby boomer myself, trying to understand how the world has evolved since I was 3 years old, is also kind of part of the story. My parents didn't have cell phones. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have cable TV. They didn't have remotes. I was my dad's remote. He said, "Son, go change the channel." That was the remote.
Me too.
Yeah. My parents' definition of discipline is quite different than the parents of today. Has today's world made for a better place for children to grow up in? I'll let your listeners kind of answer that question as they decide how they were treated versus how we're treating our kids today. So, the book is really about at what age do we begin to take responsibility for our actions? Is it 3 years old? Is it 13? Is it 23? I know plenty of 63-year-olds that still don't take responsibility for that. And so that's how and why I wrote this book.
What's interesting about that when you were talking about the cell phones versus I distinctly remember when I was a kid, there was something called a party line. Do you remember what a party line was?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, everybody knew everybody's business.
That's right. A party line was where multiple households had the same phone. And so if you picked up the phone to make a call and somebody was already talking, it was another household that was talking on the same phone that you would use. So you'd have to hang up, and they would, you try to make it. They would try to make it quick, and then you would call whoever you wanted or do it. But party lines and single phones in the house. Hey, Dad, it's for you. That was even before message machines or any of that. And so, I think as a society, yes, we've gone a long way technology wise, but I think we miss some of those things that kind of brought us together. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, and what concerns me is something you brought up just a little bit earlier about those libraries closing and books and all that. This pandemic has caused our kids to be reading less, and they're way behind the time because they weren't in school for a couple of years. According to the United Nations Educational, Science, and Cultural Organization, it's called UNESCO, 584 million children worldwide are having reading difficulties today. That versus 460 million before the pandemic. I mean, think about that. That's a 20% rise in people and little kids not being able to, even though they're exposed to the internet, so they're just not able to read. That wipes out 2 whole decades of educational gains of kids learning how to read around the world. The Stanford Graduate School of Education released a study reporting that second and third graders' reading fluency is 30% behind what we would be expecting in a typical year. It was caused, we got to catch up. It was caused by this pandemic. Reading fluency is the fundamental for academic development, more broadly used because, they learn how to read in second, third grade, and then they use how they learn how to read and understanding other things later as they go on. So step back and think about this. We have got to make up for what we lost during those 2 years, and we haven't done it yet. And this is going to affect this whole generation if we're not careful.
And I've got a story to talk about that when we come back from this break, because we're talking with Mark Joseph. He's the co-founder of babyboomer.org. Go there, sign up. get all some great information. They actually vet. I was reading this today, and we'll talk about this when we come back. They actually vet the news sources to make sure that the news that you get from this site is real and not quote unquote fake news and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about more about his work, and also he's written 100 articles for the Huffington Post. So isn't that something? We're talking again with Mark Joseph, aka Grandpa Jeffries. You're listening to Positive Talk Radio here on KIXI. Stay with us. Hey, PTR loyal listener. First, thanks for being in my dream. And second, I have a new concept in business to share with you. It's called socialpreneurship. So, what's that? Well, it's the idea that any company designates all profits beyond expenses to be awarded to a local or international charity or project which is working to achieve good in the world. KM Media is such a company. We believe that it's important for us to give back whenever possible and to make great things happen. So I hope you'll join us in creating this new business model that will positively impact all of us. In the next few weeks, we will lay out the plan and begin our fundraising efforts. So stay tuned for more details right here on Positive Talk Radio.
When you want to say more than words communicate, you can with flowers. Your custom boutique floral studio in Bothell, Washington is anaturaldesign.com, connecting you to nature through the language of flowers. Where your people are is where our flowers are beautiful. Your success is our goal. anaturaldesign.com at your fingertips today.
Hey, thanks for listening to Positive Talk Radio. Did you know that we're also a media production company? Well, surprise, we are. We can create all kinds of audio, video products to fill any need. Please visit kmmedia.pro/our-store for a complete list of products and services. In addition, do you need a great voice to add to your own website or any other project? I know that we can add depth and quality to your work. I've been told more times than I can count by many professionals in the business that my voice adds to the quality of the presentation. So, let me create something for you. Please contact me at kevin@kmmedia.pro and let's create something great. And welcome back, everybody, to Positive Talk Radio. My name is Kevin McDonald. You're listening to, well, I just said that, Positive Talk Radio on KIXI 880 AM. I hope everybody's looking forward to a great 3-day weekend. And please, 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 you don't have to get there all at the same time. Take your time. You'll get there just fine. We're talking with Gramps Jeffrey, a.k.a. Mark Joseph. He's an author. His first book was The Secrets of Retailing, How to Beat Walmart. And Ariana Huffington thought so much of the book that she asked him to contribute to the Huffington Post. And he's written over 100 articles about small business education and the homeless, and several other nonprofit topics dear to all of us, especially all of us that are a little bit longer, have been on the planet a little bit longer, and we've seen so much more. And a lot of times our experiences are downplayed and poo-pooed because we're the old folks. Well, there's a lot of intelligence here with the old folks. And I'm really it's great to have Gramps Jeffries, aka Mark Joseph, with us. And there he's back. I was worried about technology there for a second. By the way, but while we do this, I want to let everybody know that as with the new season, which starts September 4th, next Monday, Positive Talk Radio is going to be on Monday through Friday on YouTube at 3:00 Pacific Standard Time every day. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday will also be on KKNW and Kixie. And so you can find us at 3:00 regardless of where you go. We'll be right there, and we've got some great guests and interesting topics, and we'll hope you'll stay with us. Today is another example of that. We're talking with Mark Joseph, and he is one of the founders of the site, which is babyboomer.com. babyboomer.org. Don't do it with an S, it's babyboomer.org. Go there and you'll find out some great information. Welcome back, Gramps. How you doing?
I was listening to your promo about this legacy event that you are doing. That sounds fascinating.
Yes, that's what we're trying to do is we believe that we as a society need to work together for the betterment of all. And sometimes for-profit businesses take businesses just and keep the profits. What we're interested in doing is once expenses are paid to find some charities and some nonprofits that can be used, that can use those funds for the betterment of our society in general. And so that's what we're going to be working on.
Because that is another reason we started babyboomer.org is, as we all grow older, what is our legacy? What are we going to be leaving behind? The old adage that you can't take wealth with you is true. I mean, once you're gone, you're gone. You can't take it with you. So what are you going to do to do that? Because once you retire or once you slow down, you should be out there helping others. I mean, that's our legacy, is what can we do to help others? How can we volunteer to help others? What can you do to make an impact on your society? That's a question all of us should be asking ourselves. What can we do to help others? We've been concentrating on how do we help the little kids today grow up and become better a generation than we ever were. The next thing is, how do we help others in our community? And I think what you're doing means a lot to it. We as older adults, as baby boomers, or becoming baby boomers, we should be making an effort to go out there and help somebody. And because when you think about it, we as a baby boomer generation, we're a very selfish generation. We really were. We were focused on, as we were growing up, what are we going to do to make a living? How do we get ahead? We look at that. I mean, the divorce rate in the 70s or 80s is twice as high as it is today. Okay, is because we were also selfish, as a generation, very selfish generation. Well, now it's time to make up for that. Okay, we got here, we did our thing. Now, what can we do to give back? If we're an entrepreneur, can we teach younger entrepreneurs how to be better in business than we were? If we're an educator, when we retire, can we become a substitute teacher? That's one of the things I do. I never was an educator, but with this teacher shortage we have, I'm a substitute teacher in the middle school and the high school in my area. And that's the way I want to give back, because we need to be doing that across this country. And that's one of the reasons we built the site too, is to let you think about what can you do to help others with all this knowledge that you have.
I agree. And I learned that from my own father, who was an executive with Nordstrom's for 30 years, but he did not have a backup plan. So when he retired in his early 60s, he had no other thing that he was passionate about, because he'd always been Mr. McDonald. Now he was just Jack. So he wasn't really equipped to be able to go back and say, I want to give back, maybe be a dog walker. And all of us can do that. Maybe we can be a dog walker. We can help children learn how to read. You can be and go to the library and read for fun. There's a myriad of things that we can do. And you should not be, if you're retired, you should not be sitting at home just doing nothing, because you have got a wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge that needs to get passed on to the next generation. And that's why I'm really excited to be part of babyboomer.org, because you guys are working to do that. You go there and you find out all sorts of information of things that you can do and learn how to I think nowadays don't you think that once we retire, we've still got another quarter of our life left to live, most of us?
I would hope so. I would think so. Now, interestingly enough, our life expectancy has gone down. Back in 2019, it was 78 years and 10 months. In 2020, it was 77 years, and in 2021, it was 76 years. So, and a lot of this is caused because of the pandemic, of course. But we're not living as long. So we have to make each day count, because we don't know if we're going to be here tomorrow. Yeah, so that's the way we have to look at life is okay, what can I do to impact others today because I'm here and I've got this knowledge and I grew up this way and I see that there needs some help here because we as a country we've got to help each other. That's how the only way that this thing's going to keep going and democracy is going to be the way it is today.
Can I tell you a quick story?
Sure.
I was one of the things that I've always done is I've done something called family legacies. And what that is basically is I will go and interview somebody who's been on the planet a long time, and their sons or their daughters will say, I would really like you to interview my father or my mother because of the stories that they have. Almost universally, the people that I ask to go interview, they'll say, "Oh, my story's not worth anything. I'm not worth, my time has gone by, and I'm not worth anything." I had the gentleman who was, I believe, 89 at the time, and I went and interviewed him, and he said, "You're not going to like my story. There's nothing here to tell." And I said, "Well, let's get into it and we'll see." Turns out he was on the staff of George Patton's Third Army as it raced across Europe to save us from the Nazis in World War II. He then left there and he went to Hollywood. He met Bob Hope. For those of you who don't know, Bob Hope was a very, very famous comedian, and Bing Crosby and other people of that time, and he thought his story was worthless. I'm here to tell you, everybody's story has value, and don't poo-poo it. Treat it like you lived it, because you did, and it has value.
Yeah, when you think about we as older adults, when we're teaching these kids and younger generations, we don't want to give them all the things that you wish you had, but we want to teach them all the things that they wish that they knew. So we shouldn't just give them stuff. We need to teach them things that they need to know. And so you're absolutely right. And so those interviews are priceless. I mean, can you imagine a couple, three generations down the road listening to that? Those are just you can't duplicate that.
Well, I have to tell you another really quick story, and that is my dad died when he was, oddly enough, 76. I had interviewed him several months before that time. So I took that and I edited it, and at his memorial service, he talked at his memorial service about what life meant to him, when he met my mom, when he and what his value of life was. He was talking in and he had passed. And so those are the types of things that we need to keep families, and we need to keep people's legacies alive. So as long as that recording exists, his legacy will be alive.
Yeah, each one of anyone listening to us today should ask themselves, what is my legacy going to be?
Exactly. Exactly. And your legacy is babyboomer.org. You should be extremely proud of the work that you guys are doing. Now, this is just getting started on phase 2, which is now getting the word out about this and about the site and everything that you're doing. What's going to happen after phase 2?
Well, obviously, after phase 2 or during phase 2, we're going to be offering classes on the site. So there's going to be all kinds of classes that we can take. Whether we talked about technology. There's all going to be if you don't know how to use technology, we'll have classes for that. We've got classes on the site for caregiving. Our generation now is kind of in between. We're taking care of our older parents, and we got to worry about our younger kids. How do we do caregiving? What do we need to do? We've got classes on dementia, which is affecting so many of our generation. So we're going to be offering all kinds of classes on what we think are going to be relevant topics for our generation. So that's part of our new phase that's rolling out.
You must be really excited about it, because it really is a cool thing. Never heard of it before. So I think what you guys are doing, when you get together, do you all sit there and high five and say congratulate each other, or are you so deeply involved in the work that you don't have time for that yet?
Yeah, it goes back to why are we doing this? Well, we're doing this because one, the baby boomer generation, they call it the greatest generation ever. We're living it. We can say that. You
Yep.
know, other generations. I don't know if my kids would say that, but you know, we're there. You know, how can we help others? What can we do? You know, step back a second. Our parents really were the greatest generation ever because you know they grew up during the Depression.
Yep.
Then they had to save the world in World War II. So they really were the greatest generation ever to go through all that and save democracy. Yeah, and so when we were growing up, when I was growing up in the 50s, they were a very disciplined generation. Okay, you know they went through all of this pain with you know the Depression and with the war and all that. That they were very disciplined with us. So yeah, I'm thinking about discipline, how I was disciplined versus watching my kids be disciplined. You know,
It's different.
yeah. I remember when I was my mother would say to me, "Wait till your dad gets home." She would say to myself and my brother,
Yours too? Yep.
"Yeah, wait till your dad gets home." And so he'd come home and he'd whip off his belt and he'd chase us around the kitchen table. You know, that was discipline back then. He had a fraternity pal. He also used that on us. He kept in his closet. So one night when they were out, my brother and I, it was late fall, it was right after Halloween. My brother and I had went into his office, we went into his closet, and we took his fraternity pal. And there was a big pile of leaves in the backyard because I grew up in Ohio, and a big pile of leaves, and we stuck the paddle underneath the pile of leaves, and then it snowed the next night. And there was snow on the ground, and we went out to take a look at it in the spring. It was gone. To me, that was a miracle. You know, the paddle's gone. That's a great sign. Now, in today's world, my kids aren't chasing around the kids with belts and paddles. You know, they're putting them in timeout. They're talking to them. It's a whole different way of discipline. And I think it's how we all evolved. You know, our parents were very disciplined because they had to go through all these craziness to keep the world alive. And then we learned from that. We taught our kids a little differently. And then now they teach kids a little differently. So, you know, that's how, you know, the generations evolve and hopefully get better.
Well, you know, it's changed so much. And as a matter of fact, I can tell you that my mother told me for a fact that a chicken with its head cut off does run around the yard. And the reason she knew that was because that was Sunday dinner. We don't get those experiences anymore, and it's important that we recognize that. But as far as being the greatest generation, think about when you were born and when I was born, um, the changes that have happened in society, all the way up to AI, which is the new thing coming out. Our generation has seen more societal changes than any generation in history. I'm convinced of it.
Oh yeah, I mean just the internet, living through the internet before and after, and it's
Yes.
two different worlds.
It's an amazing thing, and we are very lucky. We were very lucky to be here, and we're very lucky that you've put together the site that you have, and which is babyboomer.org. I say that a lot because I really want if you are a baby boomer, I really think that you need to go look at this site because if you, as an example, you know, we don't live in the same places like we used to. We don't necessarily are friends with our neighbors and stuff, but you need a community. You need a group of people that you can socialize with. And if it needs to be online because you don't have anybody close to you, then so be it. This is a great place for you to make connections and um, to really dig deep into what's going on with you and also other people on this site. So I'm really pleased that you did that. And I'm really pleased that Positive Talk is part of it.
Oh, great! We are thrilled to have you on there because you really had a different dimension.
Well, I thank you for that because you're the one who tell me that story if you wouldn't mind, because you reached out to us for us to be on your site. How did you find us?
Well, one of the things we wanted to make sure is that the content we added were just from experts all over the country. So we actually went in and did our research to find out who really are the people that are making a difference. You know, that do blogs and articles and do you know, columns and so forth that would affect all these different categories. You know, when you think about it, the categories we have go or everything from dating, because we're, a lot of us are going through dating again, to fitness, to bucket lists. You think about what are our bucket lists? What do we want to get done? What do we want to accomplish? I was just able to get one of my bucket lists done just a few months ago, and that was I wanted to visit every 50 state, and I finally was able to do that. I was able to hit, my last state was Maine. I was able to go with Maine, so I
Good
got
for
my
you.
bucket list done. But the sports, whether it's pickleball or billiards or fishing, games. Where should we volunteer? How can we give back? Those kinds of things. But so we wanted to make sure that we had all the experts and the really people that know what they're talking about in all these different things. Like for instance, pickleball section, our expert there is the guy who wrote the book Pickleball for Dummies, okay, and which is a fabulous book if you want to play pickleball. So he's our expert that's talking about how to play pickleball, what to do, because he wrote the book. And so that was our goal. And that's how I found you. You got positive talk. We've all grown up so negative in so many different aspects. There's so much negative stuff in the news today. Just read the newspaper today for the few of us who still read the newspaper. What positive things can we share? How can we all, as we're getting older, find new things to contribute and help others? And so that's why I reached out to you.
And I really appreciate it and we're very happy to be on the site. We've got 500 and some odd episodes, and I love the way technology has made it possible. See, when I started this in 2003, none of this was available. I would be on the radio and then it would be out in the ether. It would be gone. Now everything that I do is captured on all these different sites and all this different media. And so you being here today with me will live on forever, because these shows do live on forever. And I'm very happy that you're here.
Yeah, let's just, the only one thing is, like you were great enough to do your dad at his funeral. Let's not talk about doing that for us yet.
No, we got a lot more to do. And that's why, and I honestly believe that if you looked at the statistics, the people who live their life with passion and purpose and have something more to give, even in their 70s and in their 80s, they will live longer than if you're sitting at home watching TV 27 hours a week.
Agreed.
So that's important for all of us. So get out there and go do something. And by the way, and Gramps' point is well taken. Go make friends with your kids again, and then you can be friends with the grandkids. Let them be the parents. You get to be the grandparents. So that means that you get to have some change in your pocket, that every time you go there, you say, there's a famous comedian. I won't use his name because he's a little, but he said one time his parents came and they started giving the children money. Is there money I can give this child? Look at this. I've got money in my pocket here. Have this. And the kid said, isn't Grandpa great? And he said, no, that's not the man I grew up with. He's just trying to get into heaven now. And so I thought that was really funny. But the thing is that we as grandparents have got the opportunity and the legacy and the ability to keep our name alive and to be part of the next generation. And I know that you're doing that with your 6 grandkids and with the book you've written and everything you're doing. And I really appreciate having you here.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
It's great fun. Now we've got just a couple of minutes left in the show. And if there's anything that I haven't covered that you would like to discuss, now would be the time, sir. So I'm going to step aside and give you the floor.
Well, you're talking about how we're disconnected. When I was growing up, my grandmother lived 2 blocks over, my uncle lived up the street, and we were all together. But in today's, we're scattered. I mean, me as an example, I've got one kid that lives here with 2 grandkids, one in Austin, Texas with 2 grandkids, one in Orlando, Florida with 2 grandkids, and then my son, who is a detective and is a bachelor, lives in Florida also. So they're all over the place. So how do you keep in contact with them? What do you do? And I'll tell you what I did real quick, and then I'm sure your listeners can come up with other ideas. But I found out early on that 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, even 7-year-olds love dinosaurs. for some reason, they
Oh,
all
yes.
if you take a kid to a park and he doesn't know somebody else, all of a sudden they start talking dinosaurs, and they're all best friends. I mean, my grandkids can tell me, the names of all these long dinosaurs. I can't even pronounce them. They can tell me if they eat, they eat the meat, or if they eat, if they're vegetarians. So knowing that, I needed to do something to keep in touch with these kids that don't live here with me. And so we decided that we were going to put our dinosaurs we have in the house someplace different every night, so that the kids could relate to it. So one night they were in the refrigerator eating blueberries. Another night they were by the sink with grandma washing dishes. Another night they were playing the piano. Another night walking up. So we had 50 different nights of these dinosaurs around the house and outside. So
That's
we became part of the routine of these kids. So the ones in Florida, they would go through, take their bath, they read the books, and they said, "What are the dinosaurs doing tonight?" And they would
and
call us. And
Gramps,
that's
I gotta tell you, unfortunately, we've run out of time. But I'm glad that you told that dinosaur story. Everybody else can use the same thing. I want to thank everybody for being here. Go to babyboomer.org, and remember, be kind to one another, because each other's all we've got. We'll see you Monday.